What is up YouTube, and we are back for another RiftGuides WildRift video, and today we're going to talk about the 10 most OP builds for the 10 most OP champions. Needlessly to say, if there's time for it, we'll do another part 2 for this one, but after watching this video, you will know what to build on all these champions and win most of your games with absolute ease, because these builds are absolutely insane. So without any further ado, let's hop straight to Mr. Jax. Start with a ruby crystal because it makes your laning phase a lot easier. The bonus health will allow you to trade in an easier fashion because more health in the early game overpowers more damage, because the 150 health are more efficient in sense of winning lane compared to the 12 AD. Especially since they also enable you to rush defensive boots, be it plated steel caps or merc trats. After this, you can make a decision. You want to go for Trinity Force or Divine Syndra. Trinity Force is very powerful when it comes to snowballing. Divine Syndra is a very good default choice, but if you see that the enemy is already going for the Divine Syndra, you also have to mirror this, or otherwise you will lose out on your champion on 2 to 3 items because the enemy will have too much sustain. After this, you'll go for the Rift Maker, and with this in your pocket, you will then go for the Titanic Hydra. All of your items beforehand feature health, and with the Titanic Hydra you have even more damage as well as tankiness available. For your full build, you'll go for Steric's Gage for more HP since you have already so much, and then you can choose between Nash's Tooth and obviously Guardian Angel. In some instances you can choose other items, but this is just a cookie cutter build how you can approach it in the easiest fashion. For your runes, you want Grasp because it's powerful in the laning phase, Courage of the Colossus, Second Wind, Overgrowth, and Demolish. Titanic is also very popular for Fiora. Here you have another ruby crystal slot going straight for defensive boots because your champion deals enough damage as it is. After this, it's again Divine Syndra against Trinity Force, but now comes the real kicker which I've already presented last time, it's Manamune. Without Manamune or Manamune, you will not have enough mana to consistently push side lane and you will face big issues. After this, you can nowadays go for Titanic Hydra, providing you with even more health, especially since you're running Grasp, making your attacks very potent in a short-term trading window. Once you have this item, you can again go for Steric's Gage and then go into Hullbreaker. In some games you will not need the Hullbreaker and you'd rather go for a Guardian Angel, or in other games you'll go for the Hullbreaker a little bit earlier because the other team has significant wave clear. It really depends on the game, and this is just a cookie cutter thing you can go for. For your runes, you go for Grasp if you really want to turbo stomp lane in a combination with Brutal, Giant Slayer and Bloodline, which really benefits from the true damage you're dealing. To make sure you take down every tower on the entirety of the map, just go for the lovely Demolish. For Lucian, we have to talk about some issues with the build that you're currently seeing on the leaderboard with the Magnetic Blaster inside of it. But for this one, we'll start with a different approach. First off, we start with a longsword as per usual, but we rush for the Gluttonous Greaves and not for the Armor Pen boots. After this, it's the Duskblade Rush and then the Solari Charge Blade. However, once we get this, we do not go for the Magnetic Blaster, but we go for Bloodthirster instead. After we get the Bloodthirster, we then have to make a decision. Do we want to go for Infinity Edge for more damage, or go for Navori Quick Blades for more spells, which then also equates to more damage? Infinity Edge is more burst damage, but Navori means more mobility and therefore more chase down potential, so it's really up to you what you believe is best. And as for your last item, you go for the Armor Pen item, be it Mortal Reminder or Cyrilda. In some games you also have to go for Armor Pen a little bit earlier, and then you'll delay the other items. For the boot enchants, you'll go for Protobelt or Quicksilver because these are the most potent. As for your runes or summoner spells here, you can run Flash and Ignite, or in most instances when you play AD carry, you go for Flash and Exhaust. But still, in most instances this will be completely fine, you'll stomp lane in most instances. For your runes, it's Kraken Slayer, Brutal, Giant Slayer, Bloodline and Sudden Impact. The two first runes, Kraken Slayer and Brutal, basically carry your entire champion during the early mid and probably late game because it deals so much damage on your champion since it's so easy to apply them consistently. For the AD carry position, we have another Ezreal build, and this is mostly against AP champions. In this instance, we'll still start with a longsword going for a Gluttonous Greaves rush and then straight up for the Manamune. After this, it's Trinity Force time into more of the Malmortiers. Against most AP champions, this item literally breaks them because they cannot play the game anymore. They are literally incapable of killing you because you can just restack the passive of the shield constantly. After this, you will then go for a Bloodthirster to double dip because you gain health and you gain a shield at the same time, making it even more impossible for the enemy to kill you. And then afterwards, you either go for Pen or a Sense Reaver. It really depends on how the game is going and what you truly need. In many games, you will not even need the Armor Pen outside of for the slow, and in other games, you truly desperately crave it. Now for the boot enchants, we have something quite interesting. Here we can choose between Protobelt, Stasis, or Quicksilver. Many of you will be like, why the heck would you go for Protobelt on Ezreal? In many games, Protobelt will be the difference that you can have to actually carry a game because you're more mobile to go for kills, which then is substantially easier. And in a lot of instances, Zhonya's will not save you, but QSS might very well do so. Needless to say though, if you are not competent or confident in your abilities to use the Protobelt, please stick to the defensive alternatives. For the summoner spells, it's Flash and obviously Exhaust, and for the runes, it's similar to Lucian, Kraken Slayer and Brutal, and then we go for a second tree for bone plating. Now let's talk about Syndra. You'll start with an Amplifying Tomb and go for the Boots of Mana. After this, your biggest power spike on a one item power spike is Luden's Echo. After this, it's Infinity Orb and then Rabadon Staff Cap. You really don't want to delay Rabadon Staff Cap on your champion because you basically gain a baby Rabadons on your passive and you really want to utilize the bonus AP. Once you have that lovely head, you can go for Crown or Awakened Soul Stealer, because with Awakened Soul Stealer you can one-shot somebody and have your cooldowns back instantly after, well, a big portion of them, and Crown really helps you survive against other people. If you don't need Crown, you can go for Horizon Focus on your last item, because Horizon Focus as a damage item scales very, very well. In late game you can proc it twice in a full combo, adding so much bonus damage like the flat portion of Horizon Focus, plus the 25% AP. So basically in a full combo you deal the bonus damage of Horizon Focus twice, which is then half of your entire AP plus the flat damage. So this is something you should not discount. As for your boot enchant, it's the Stasis one. Summoner spells is most of the time Flash and Ignite, and as for your runes, you'll go for First Strike, Lane Bully runes as Scorch, Cheap Shot, and go for Eyeball Collector, and for Transcendence. Now let's talk about the quote-unquote newly buffed Aurelion Sol. He will go for Amplifying Tomb into Boots of Mana, and then the old core with the Rylai's Crystal Scepter is still the default build. However, now we change it up a little bit. We then go for the Riftmaker into Rabadon Staff Cap, and then we go for Crown. Our champion is relatively fragile and really banks on the fact that we can freely channel our first ability. It's very important as well to combine it with your second ability to deal even more damage. As for your last item, you'll then finally go for Liandry's Torment, because at that point you will have enough AP to really deal some extra damage with that one. For your boot enchants, you will go for Stasis, probably in 99.9% of your games, and for your summoner spells, just take Flash and Exhaust. Your runes could be a little bit more interesting, because here we are going for the Inspiration Tree with First Strike, the Honeyfruit Rune, Transcendence, Mana Flow, and then we go into the Gathering Storm. However, if the enemy team has enough HP stackers, you will go for Giant Slayer instead of Gathering Storm. Keep that in mind, it's very important. Now we'll talk about the jungle role, and here we have Hackerem. For your start item, you'll go for Longsword for an accelerated jungle clear, and most of the time you will finish your Lucidity boots as your first item. After this, you will hop or go straight for the Triforce because it's the biggest damage spike. Depending on the time you have on the map or gold you have in your inventory, you can rush Trinity Force first before you even get boots. After this, you go for Shojin and then Manamune. It doesn't really matter that you get Manamune a little bit delayed, because you will get to stack it anyway since you're spamming your first ability whatsoever. For your full build, you would then go for defensive item choices. In most instances, you will make the choice between Death's Dance and Mortimer Mortius, and for your last item, Starrick's Gage or Guardian Angel. For your boot enchantments, you'll go for Quicksilver, Glorious because it boosts your movement speed and therefore you deal more damage, or Stasis to basically nullify an enemy all-in on certain spells. For your summoner spells, you'll go for Ghost because it's amplifying your damage and works very well on your champion, and for runes there's something quite unique. You'll go for Phase Rush, Triumph, A Last Stand, the Legend Tenacity Rune, and Nimbus Cloak. But there's one thing about this build that you need to know. It is very squishy and it banks on the fact that you are very fast. Utilizing Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Ghost, and all of the other bonus movement speed items you have properly will make the difference between you killing everyone and you dying on cooldown. In a proper environment where everything is controlled, the Bruiser build might be better, but for a solo queue environment or generally a solo queue context where it's all about fighting and snowballing, this build can literally accelerate you into the heavens. But really, you have to be really careful because you can die so unbelievably fast if you don't pay attention, which makes the build a little bit harder to pilot, but definitely worth it in a solo queue environment. Now let's talk about our lovely Evelynn. This champion's damage is quite insane and we all know it is really crazy. Nothing much has changed. Amplifying Tomb, Boots of Mana, Lichbane Rush because it's the highest damage. The choice between Infinity Orb and Crown is still available, but most of the time you'll still just go for Infinity Orb and then for Rabadon. If you choose to have Crown as your second item right after Lichbane, you will go for Infinity Orb after getting Rabadon. But still, you really have to keep that one in mind. You lose a lot of damage by going Crown over the Infinity Orb because you're running Sudden Impact as well as Boots of Mana, which is a lot of flat pen. For your last item, after all of this, you'll go for the Awakened Soul Stealer, granting you more flat pen and a nice reset on your ultimate, because your champion can be potentially very ult-centric. For your runes, it's First Strike because in Assassin you get billions of gold, Protobelt in combination with this to have a better gap closer in the mid to late game, Sudden Impact, Mark of the Week because all the other choices don't really do too much on your champion even though Mark of the Week is relatively weak, and then you go for Eyeball Collector into Giant Slayer. Depending on what game you're playing, you don't really need Coup de Grace because it doesn't do anything for your champion. If the enemy is low, you're already getting one tapped. Alternatively, you can go for Overgrowth because your champion farms a lot. So yeah, you can make all these choices. There is a new build in town which I've hand tested in Legendary Queue. This build is very weird, looks very weird, but is very powerful if you understand how to pilot Senna in a very bursty environment. Most of the games you're playing right now is facing a lot of people, or you're facing a lot of people in those games that are dealing way too much damage. So what can you do to survive this? Well, you just go for tank items yourself and you stack them. So for Senna, start with Relic Shield, go for Defensive Boots, go for Heartsteel, Titanic Hydra and Runan's Hurricane. After this, be even more clear with your itemization, go for more of the Marmotsias, Infinity Edge, Armor Pen item, and maybe even a Sterix Gauge, depending on what game you're playing. Many of you will be like, why Heartsteel on Senna? You don't really proc it. You do proc it if you played with the full tank setup, because you're allowed to just go in and face tank people. That way you play bait for your teammates as well as still dealing damage, because Heartsteel still does quite a good amount of damage in combination with your and the item's infinite scaling. To then draw some extra damage from Heartsteel as an item, you then go for Titanic Hydra. With this, you finally have damage to bully people in teamfights. Now with all of this done, you finally go for the item that completely enables your build to deal even more damage, the Runan's Hurricane. Runan's Hurricane has a unique interaction with Titanic Hydra, allowing you to proc it 3 times with 1 auto attack. And after this, you go for more damage because, well, you're already tanky enough as it is. You can also debate going for more tank items depending on the draft you're facing, which in this instance is more of Multiple Marmotsias, and otherwise just Infinity Edge for raw damage. Other items such as Sterix Gauge for more HP since you have so much HP already, plus a bonus shield, or Mortal Reminder because of Pen. Depending on, again, what type of damage you're facing, you can even go for an Amaranth Twin Guard, turning you into a true Juggernaut. For your boot enchant, you'll go for Locket of the Iron Solari and combine it with your ultimate ability. Your ultimate ability has a charge time, so it takes some time until it's basically thrown out, and therefore the shield only applies a little bit later, but you can combine it with Locket to have a flawless transition between shields that also stack, making your team even tankier. For your summoner spells, Flash and Heal, and as for your runes, you go for Kraken Slayer, Brutal, Giant Slayer, Bloodline, and Bone Plating. You can technically go for the Resolve tree, but I really recommend going for the Precision tree because you have more damage during the laning phase, allowing you to consistently bully other people, and therefore getting to bigger item spikes a lot faster because you have more gold due to kills and overall pressure on the map. For the last build, we'll talk about Leona. We start with a Relic Shield and go for either Defensive Boots, but I can only showcase one type of Defensive Boot, or for Lucidity Boots. For your core items, you'll choose between rushing Zeke's Convergence or Heartsteel. If you have a good AD carry that you can potentially rely on, Zeke's is the best item for your champion without any questions asked. If you have no AD carry that you can potentially rely on, then just go for Heartsteel. After this, you go for Warmorks to have more map presence, Thornmail to have anti-healing, then you can go for Protector's Vow, and other items such as Amaranth Twin Guard. For your summoner spells, just run Flash and Ignite, go for the Gargoyle, Stoneplate Enchant, or Protobelt, and in case you're wondering why the heck would you go for Protobelt, you go for Protobelt to proc the enemy's crown to then hit them with ultimate. That way you don't need to force your ult to get their crown, which has a similar cooldown, and yeah, you get the idea basically. And for runes, just go for Glacial Augment, Courage of the Colossus, Second Wind, Perseverance, and Triumph. And with that, we're at the end of today's video. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these builds, if you tried many of these, if you've seen them so far, because I've seen a few, well, running around in ranked sometime, or at least some deviations. And as per usual, like the video, leave a comment in general, boost the algorithm, make sure to get more people to see this video, and maybe one day, once we are completely done with everything, these builds will be available for all our Patreon members. One day, soon TM. Anyways, thanks for watching, and see you soon for more RiftGuides content.